Hey everyone, this is the Metroidvania Guru, back for another update with the definitive Metroidvania tier list. As you already know, I pick everything using the randomized picker. Today we got our 3 games, and they are going to be Gato Roboto, Castlevania, Circle of the Moon, and Momodora, Reverie Under the Moonlight. Now before I get started, I do want to take a look at some of the amendments that I'd like to make to the tier list based off of feedback and just me sitting down and just reanalyzing these games. As you know, or as you've gathered, I kind of do these tier list updates very off the cuff, just kind of on the top of my head. I don't script them, I usually have them as just like bullet points. And because of that, I may miss some things. So I like to sit down, really take a look at the tier list so far and see where I may have had some missteps. This is going to be the most heavily amended episode so far because I found a few that I think really need to be shifted around. The first one is Metroid on the NES. Having it so low on the tier list just seems kind of wrong, especially when you take a look at, how influential it is. And I try not to really add that as a criteria, right? I try not to evaluate, well, how influential was this game to the genre? But because it was the beginning of really the Metroidvania genre and just everything was just in the wild, wild west, I have to be a little bit more forgiving to it, especially because I can go back to the original Metroid and I can still have a lot of fun with it. There are some games right now I have above it on this list that I don't have as much fun with as I do with the original Metroid. And because of that, I want to move it, not simply because I still find it fun, but because it does do some interesting things, or at least it does follow the formula that it really made the foundation for. So it's fun, and it's a legit Metroid game or Metroidvania. So I think it needs to go up a little bit. And after evaluating, I think I'm going to put it in the C tier above Batbarian. I think that's a better spot for it because I do appreciate it a lot more than the other games underneath it now, as well as it actually being, a really competent Metroidvania. Even though it's not the best game or the best example of the genre, it did lay down that foundation and it did a pretty good job. Then that brings me to another amendment, and that's going to be Castlevania Harmony of Dissonance. As much as I personally don't really like that game, it's not that bad. So I think my subjectivity got in the way of really where this game should be on the tier list. And with that being said, I'm comfortable with putting Harmony of Dissonance above where Metroid is now. I think that's more fair to that game. And the reason I say that is because it's not really a bad game. It's not great, and it's barely good, in my opinion. But it at least does the things that it needs to do to make itself a Metroidvania. And quite honestly, it's not really that bad of a game. And then my last amendment is going to go to Vigil, The Longest Night. That game, I think, is kind of a hidden gem. It's a 2.5D Soulsvania, and it really is a lot of fun to play. So I think it should go at least above these Shantaes. Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. So I still have it in B tier, but I just think that game is better than the Shantae games. And I love the Shantae games. I am a huge fan of Shantae in like pretty much every game that she's made, but even I can let you know that her games are just they're kind of mid. I mean, I think they're a little bit above mid. That's why I have the Shantae games in B. But looking back at Vigil and replaying Vigil recently, it's just, man, that's a really cool, interesting, and unique game. It's unfortunate that it's been delisted, so you can't really purchase it anymore. So if there's any other way to play this game, I'll let you all figure that out. But yeah, it got delisted. I don't know why, but Vigil, The Longest Night is really good. Okay, with the amendments out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into our first game, Gato Roboto. Gato Roboto is a game I actually did a video on. I'll put a card up in the top right corner wherever those go if you're interested. But yeah, based off that video, you can probably tell that I actually like this game. It's pretty good. I'm not going to say it's one of the best Metroidvanias of all time. It's not going to blow your mind, but it's definitely worth checking out. And so just like any of these entries, I'm going to just go through the pros and the cons. I'll do a spoiler section because there are some spoilery things I'd like to talk about with Gato Roboto. I'll give you my final thoughts and then we'll rank it. So sound good? Let's go. So the first pro I have here for Gato Roboto is humor. It's a pretty funny game. It's got a really silly premise, and it just really just kind of goes with it. You know, I mean, you're a cat in a mech suit running around shooting things. It's, you know, it kind of writes itself. The next pro I have here is that it has solid controls, which it absolutely does. Gato Roboto, it is an exploration game, but it's really more of a platformer in that it really focuses on platforming challenges, which will bring me to my next point, but I just want to kind of finish up on the solid controls. But yeah, moving around as either the cat or the mech feels really good. Jumping around is great. The double jump, I thought the double jump felt a little weird at first, but I got used to it eventually. And then anything you did with the missiles felt really great. Like, especially you could use the missiles to like heighten your jumps. Like, you'd shoot the missile down and you could jump, and then it would just make you jump a little higher. That was all really cool. You eventually get like a dash move, which is awesome. But yeah, just everything about this game, it plays really well and it feels really good. And the reason that's important is my next point. Backtracking is rewarded with fun platforming sections. Gato Roboto really wants to focus on being a platformer above all else. Now, don't get me wrong, there is exploration and things to find. I don't think it's very good, but the platforming is wonderful in this game. Matter of fact, pretty much any kind of backtracking you do in this game, you're going to be rewarded with a really interesting platforming section. One of the platforming sections I remember that at least it stuck into my head after playing the game was when you get the vent biome or something like that. And once completing the vent biome, you can backtrack and you'll find a room that is just the vents going nuts. And the entire challenge is you just navigating this area while vents blow you all over the place. It was kind of fun. But yeah, because the controls are so solid and the platforming, you know, genuinely fun to do, and they would ultimately give you these rewards if you backtracked, and these rewards were just more platforming, it worked out pretty well. My next pro, it just says cat versus mech. I really liked the dynamic of being the cat and also being the cat inside the mech suit. It really felt like you could be two different characters. The cat, it can jump all over the place and it can crawl up walls, and it's, you know, smaller so it can get into smaller areas, but you had to be careful because one hit and you're dead. Then there's the mech suit, which gives you a lot more protection, so you become much tankier and so you can take more hits, as well as having actual weapons. As the cat, you really just got to kind of run around to figure things out. But as the mech, you got your missiles, you got your regular blaster, you got your double jump, all kinds of cool stuff. So it was kind of cool that the cat and the mech controlled completely differently. And it was really interesting how they would incorporate using the cat versus the mech in certain puzzles. That was really, I thought that was pretty good. The story for Gato Roboto I thought was okay, but I liked how you discovered it via secret consoles. Like, the story wasn't spoon-fed to you. I think there were moments when it actually, on the critical path, you could find some story beats, but largely you had to find these secret consoles that were kind of out of the way, and you'd press a button and then a recording would play and it would tell you things that happened in the past that kind of, you know, give you the story. I just thought that was pretty cool. The next pro I have here is unlimited missiles. I'm a huge fan of having unlimited secondary weapons. I always find it annoying in Metroidvanias when you have a secondary weapon and you have to like get charges for it based off of enemy drops. I just find that to be a little frustrating. You know, examples of that would be like the Wonder Boy games. Of course, some Castlevanias do that as well. And if you want a more obscure one, Beholgar, the Barbarian game, that one also did it. So I appreciate when a developer creates a system that limits or restricts how often you can use a secondary weapon without, you know, making it dependent on enemy drops. And so what Gato Roboto does, it gives you unlimited missiles, but you can only shoot like 2 at a time, and then your temperature gauge would get, you know, overheated, and then you'd have to wait for it to cool down before you can shoot again. But if you would shoot just 1 at a time and then let your temperature go down, essentially you wouldn't have to worry about overheating and you could shoot more often. Really cool system, implemented really well, and I really appreciated it. Next thing I liked about Gato Roboto was its introduction. It does that Super Metroid thing where it like drops you into the biome and then you can really just kind of explore it. Like, there's not a whole lot to explore. A lot of it's shut off to you, but it's done intentionally as a tutorial. And so you're exploring, you're moving around. There's no enemies, no threats. You're just exploring, gathering your bearings, if you will. Then you find the mech suit, you get in there, and then all those empty environments then become full of enemies, you know, just like in Super Metroid. And then the rest of this opening biome is really just built up to when you finally get the missiles. So I thought it was just a really good introductory biome for players. Next pro I have is that I really liked some of the early to mid-game boss fights. I thought they were pretty good, especially the ones where it had like the mouse and the contraptions. Those always seemed very inventive, and they were a whole lot of fun to do, and they were mildly challenging. That challenge goes down as you go into the late game, but we'll get to that in the cons. Now here's a big one for me. The next pro I have here is that the biomes felt unique despite limitations from the art style. So if you look at Gato Roboto, it basically looks like a Game Boy game. Maybe a little better than a Game Boy game, but it's basically giving off those vibes. And so what the game does in its biomes, I thought was pretty cool. So you have your introductory biome. Once you complete that, you go into like this hub biome, and then there are basically just 4 other biomes in the game. And each of those biomes adds a little something to make each one kind of unique. Like we got the ventilation biome, we got the heat biome, and then the water biome. And they each have their own kind of look, but really a mechanic that makes them stick out. So I thought that was pretty good. Speaking of the biomes, I'd like to go into the next pro, and that's the solidative narrative structure it has. So I brought up it has the introductory biome, then it goes to a hub with the 3 areas, and then you got your final area, right? So it's very clear to the player. It's like, hey, here's the elevator to the final area, but you can't unlock that elevator until you finish these other 3 biomes. It's a pretty solid way to set up a game, and it really just kind of keeps you motivated and moving, and I just really thought it was kind of cool. And the reason I thought it was kind of cool is because of the last pro I have here, and that's that Gato Roboto is very short. And I'm putting this down as a pro because I really do believe it's a good thing. It really is a strength to Gato Roboto, its brevity. Because I don't know if I could handle this game's graphic style any longer than the 2 hours it took me to beat it. And I guess that finally brings us to the cons, and as you can imagine, I don't really like the graphics to this game. The art style's fine. Kiki, which is the cat you play as, looks adorable, and then you got your humans, you got the mouse, and the enemy designs in this game are adorable, to be honest with you. But yeah, I don't like the fact that it's all just black and white. Takes me back to like Game Boy era. I wasn't a huge fan of Game Boy graphics. I mean, when I was like 6 or 7, I played them because that's all I had, but it's not what I prefer. And I know this is a subjective thing, and a lot of people are going to come in and be like, oh, I actually like the graphics in this game. That's perfectly fine. I just personally didn't. So what I can say is that I won't use it to like evaluate where it goes on the tier list. I never really do with graphics, especially if the graphics are done well and the game works well, which is the case for Gato Roboto. One of the things that I will say hurts this game a lot is that the rewards in it suck. Like doing any sort of backtracking or any sort of extracurricular exploration beyond the critical path is just pointless in my opinion, because most of the rewards are going to be just like filters. And what I mean by that is like, if you don't like the black and white color scheme, you can find filters throughout the game and it'll turn them puke green or poop brown or something. It's just stupid. And there's like, I can't remember off the top of my head, but there might be like a dozen or so of these filters that you can find. And I just, I hated it. I hated finding them. I never used them, and I just didn't like it. I'll get into that a little bit more when we go to the spoilers, which is coming up soon. But I do want to go to my last con, and that's that the bosses are very easy in the end game. And I think it mainly has to do with just how powerful you can get your mech by finding all these health kits. And a lot of the mid to end game bosses, I was really just standing there and just tanking and spanking everything. It was just ridiculous. But yeah, that'll be my cons for Gato Roboto. Not a whole lot that I don't like about this game. It's very short, and so there's not a whole lot to talk about. Okay, some spoilers I want to talk about when it comes to Gato Roboto. The first one here is when you beat the game, it locks you out of the game, which is a huge con. Like, I love to reload my old save files every once in a while just to like be like, hey, I remember this game. Let's go in here and let's take a look at it, right? Well, you can't really do that in Gato Roboto. It really just locks you out of the game. When you load up a completed file, you start in the spaceship that you escaped in. And there's really nothing to do. You can talk to the dog and you can talk to the mouse guy. It's incredibly disappointing, especially if you wanted to like explore some more and find some stuff that you may have missed. And my other spoiler here has to do with the rewards. Like I said earlier, rewards typically are going to be these stupid filters that I hated. And of course, you can find some health kits every once in a while to increase your HP. But then there's a character in the game who will upgrade your gun if you find filters. And again, I don't remember off the top of my head how many filters there are, but if you find half the filters in the game, he makes your gun shoot faster, I think, or maybe gives it like a piercing. I don't know. I can't remember, but it's something that adds to your gun and it makes your gun a little better. And then when you get all filters in the game, it gives you basically the space jump from Super Metroid. And what that means is that you can just jump infinitely. That's pretty cool, but there's really only one spot in the game where you need to use it, and it's used to just get the last health kit in the game. So it felt, awful to get. You're like, oh my gosh, I spent all this time finding all these dumb filters to get the space jump that I use in one spot. I don't know, it just didn't feel great to me. All right, my final thoughts on Gato Roboto. I enjoyed this game. I thought it was fun to play, and it was very short, so I sat down and beat it in one sitting, and I would recommend it to pretty much anyone, especially someone who's new to the genre. I think they might really enjoy Gato Roboto. It does focus more on the platforming than it does exploration, and don't get me wrong, there's exploration in the game, there is rewards, but in my opinion, the rewards are trash. But if you really enjoy platforming, this game is going to be for you. So with that being said, where do I place Gato Roboto on the tier list? I would not put it above C. I think it is very average. Not that that's a bad thing, I just don't think it's doing a whole lot for the genre. So I'm thinking here. Yeah, I like that. I think that works out pretty well. Gato Roboto, right underneath Fist and above Harmony of Dissonance. And I know even then, I don't know what it is about Harmony of Dissonance. There's just something about the game. I just did not like it. I should probably revisit it and reevaluate some things on it. But as it sits right now, I would put Gato Roboto above Harmony of Dissonance. Gato Roboto is an average game that I think a lot of people will enjoy. And so I figure putting it in the C tier for average and about in the middle is about as average can get. So there you go. Gato Roboto in the middle of the C. Next up, we have Castlevania Circle of the Moon. This is the first Igavania on the Game Boy Advance, and of the 3 on the GBA, this one actually doesn't have Iga involved in it. But I just continue to call it an Igavania because it's not a traditional Castlevania. I kind of put them as, here's a traditional Castlevania, and then these are your Igavanias, which are the Metroidvania Castlevanias. That's kind of how I look at things. So you're going to hear me call Circle of the Moon an Igavania. Just know that I know Iga wasn't involved in it. That being said, I wonder how Circle of the Moon is going to do on this tier list, because it has a lot to live up to. This was the Igavania made directly after Symphony of the Night. So you'd think it'd be like amazing, right? But because it came out on the GBA and the limitations of that hardware were just so strict, this game kind of got shafted, but we'll get into it. So getting with the pros, the first thing I like about this game is its introduction. It has this huge drop at the beginning that I just think is just really cool. I think it drops you down into like, I don't know, like basically this place, but then it goes into the catacombs or something like that. So you're at the bottom of the castle and you got to work yourself up. I thought that was kind of cool. And then the next pro I have here is just the actual like castle setup. I thought it was just really interesting, just the placement of the biomes. You got this one like long drop area, and then you got your area where you got to go up, and then here's the castle proper, and there's just all kinds of running around and things like that. I think they did a really good job with the castle design in Circle of the Moon. And because of that, I thought exploration was pretty solid. I have my qualms with the exploration, and we'll get to that in the cons, but overall, I liked running around this castle. Finding stuff was kind of a poop shoot, if you will. Like, you would get HP and MP ups, but there wasn't a whole lot more to find while you were exploring. Now, there were things that you could get, and we'll get to that when it comes to RNGesus and just the con section, trust me. But I really liked exploring this castle. I thought it was pretty good. And since I brought up RNGesus, I guess I'll talk about the random item drops in this game. We're going to stick to the pro side of these item drops because there's a definite con side as well. But when it comes to the pros, I really liked the item drops. They drop accessories and armor and of course the cards. That was a really cool idea. I don't think it was implemented perfectly, but still and that's one of the things that I love about Igavanias are these enemy drops. You can find all kinds of cool stuff as you play the game, and it's all luck based, and it makes every playthrough feel different. So you gotta love that about Igavanias. Another thing I like, and I don't want to dive too deeply into it right now, I'll get into it a little bit with the spoilers, but there's an entire biome in the game that is completely optional. And I know Symphony of the Night did that, and a lot of other Metroidvanias have done it in the future, but to see it on the GBA game, that was pretty cool. And then the last pro I have here is the DSS system, which stands for Dual Setup System. This system was cool. It was a cool idea. It's not my favorite. A lot of people really like it. I think it's unique and interesting, but I'm kind of glad they dropped it after this game. But because it is in this game, it's what makes this game really cool and unique. And so if you don't know what the DSS system is, basically it's like cards. You collect cards that are dropped from enemies randomly, and you have 2 rows of cards, a top row and then a bottom row. And what you do is you select a card from the top row and you select a card from the bottom row, and then the combination of those 2 cards creates a spell for you. And because there are so many cards in the game, I can't think off the top of my head, but maybe like, I don't know, 20, we'll say 20 cards. Could be more, could be less, but because there's, let's say 10 cards on the top, 10 cards at the bottom, you have like a ridiculous amount of combinations that you could do to create all kinds of weird spells. You can make a spell that heals you over time. You can make a spell that lets you summon monsters. You can make a spell that makes you invulnerable. It's absolutely insane, all the ridiculous crap you can do in this game. And so that brings us to the cons. And one of the cons I have here is the DSS system. The DSS system, I think it just wasn't explained well enough. And let me give you an example. I talked about how you could summon monsters at some point. Well, you can equip the cards that give you the spell to summon that monster. But if you don't know that you also have to do like a certain movement and attack sequence just to summon the monster, you're going to think that combination doesn't do anything. And there's a bunch of spells that do that. Like there's this one spell that basically you do like the Hadouken movement and you'll like hurl like a lightning ball at somebody. It doesn't tell you to do that. You just got to kind of figure it out yourself, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, there's so much in the DSS system that's just not explained or told to you, and it just, you really got to look up a wiki or something to figure this out. The next con I have is the stiff movement. You don't play as a Belmont in this game. I think his name's Nathan Reeves or something like that. I could be wrong on that. But I do know he's not a Belmont, and I do know he moves like a Belmont. Like the movement is just stiff, jumps are basically committed. He only has a whip as a weapon, so, that slowness that comes with that can kind of be an issue. He does get a dash and he can do a lot of cool stuff like jumping off walls and getting a super jump and stuff like that. I get it, but largely he does not play like Alucard. We'll say that. Alucard moved so much better. And that brings me to my next con, is that there's only one weapon in the game and you can't really upgrade it, which is kind of unfortunate. Like, don't get me wrong, whips are really awesome and you love to see them in Castlevania games, but it would have been cool if there was some way to like make it stronger. Like attach a stone to it or enhance it somehow. I don't know. But no, you level up in the game, so you do get stronger, I suppose, but nothing you can directly do to your weapon. The next con I have here is that I absolutely hated backtracking in this game. It was just the worst. There is fast travel, but it's more of like a waypoint system, just like on Symphony of the Night. You go to the yellow room in the map, you can then teleport to any other yellow room in the map. And this map, it's pretty big. I'd say it's about mid when it comes to Metroidvania maps. And there's like maybe 5 waypoints, and all these waypoints are really just kind of centralized in like the middle of the map. Like if they just had just one more waypoint at the very bottom in like the catacombs where you drop down, it would make backtracking so much better. But if you want to revisit those catacombs, it's a time commitment because you got to drop down and then you got to climb all the way back up. It just sucks. The next con I have here is a very big one, and that's that this game is grindy. Like, if you want something in this game, good luck, because there's no shops. To get anything in this game, it's going to be an enemy drop, whether it be potions or those cards you need for the DSS system. And the drop rates in this game, I swear, are like almost at 0%. And I could be wrong on that, but during my latest playthrough of the game, like, I had to like kill this one specific enemy like 200 times before it dropped the card that I wanted. And it could just be bad luck on my end. I totally get that. But it still sucks that was a possibility, that I had to kill that thing 200 freaking times. So yeah, if you really want to get the cards and stuff that you want for that DSS system, prepare to grind, because it's gonna be rough, man. My next 2 cons kind of go together. They're kind of a big deal too, but if you did not know, Circle of the Moon is freaking hard. There is an insane spike in difficulty, and I can't remember the thing's name that a lot of people attribute this spike to. I don't think he was that bad, but it was 2 stupid zombie dragons that are just an absolute roadblock, man. You got to fight these zombie dragons, and they will just destroy you. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's just everything is so stiff. Like, it's tough to jump up and hit these things because of the stiff controls, and you're going to just like bump into the thing. And of course, there's contact damage. And yeah, a lot of these bosses get really, really hard. I had to cheese a few of them. Like, for the zombie dragon, there's like a place where you can stand and it's pretty safe. And I used this DSS card combination that healed over time. And so I was able to defeat the zombie dragons, but it took like a half hour or something. It was absolutely nuts. And I guarantee there are better ways to take this thing out, but I just, this was my first time playing the game, and I was like, oh, what do I do? And that's what I did. And it worked, but man, it sucked. And I think I did the same thing when you fight your rival. I think his name is Hugh in this game. And when you fight him, it's a very similar thing where there's like a spot you can jump up to that's like relatively safe. He can't get you. And you just kind of I just stood there and healed over time. I don't know, man. I just thought these bosses were incredibly hard. I haven't got to the boss of the game yet. We'll get to that in the spoilers. But yeah, this game is tough. At least it was for me. Maybe I'm stupid. Maybe I'm not a good gamer. You guys let me know in the comments. But I just absolutely this game kicked my butt. And now we get to the final con, and that's really that the enjoyment of this game is entirely dependent on RNG, right? Because the drop rates are abysmal. And this can be seen as a plus or a minus, right? Because I talked about in the pros, I like these enemy drops, but it's just your enjoyment in this game is so dependent on that RNG. Like, had I not gotten the cards that were necessary to create that spell that gives healing over time, I wouldn't have beat this game. So that enemy drop thing that Igavanias are known for, it's a definite double-edged sword in this game. It's going to make or break your runs. All right, so as for spoilers, I only have a couple here. One I'm going to talk about is that the entire biome that you can completely just skip. I thought that was just awesome. I didn't skip it when I first played the game because I didn't really know. But on subsequent playthroughs, I absolutely skipped that biome. And it's not easy to do. And just to kind of let you all know, so there's a biome in the game where you go and you fight death. And as a reward for that fight, you get the cleansing ring, I think is what it's called. And what this ring does is that it cleanses the water in this other biome so that you can actually, get into the water without getting hurt. But you can actually skip all of Death's biome and go straight into the I think they're sewers or something, and just navigate around this hurtful water. It can actually be done, but it's super hard. And so I just wanted to give kudos to the game for doing that, giving me the option to just completely skip an entire biome and instead do another biome at an incredibly higher difficulty, because this game was already super hard anyway. So thanks for that, I suppose. Speaking of incredibly high difficulty, let's talk about Dracula. This is the final boss in the game, as you can imagine, and he is just wow. Absolutely wow. I cannot think of a more difficult final fight in a Castlevania game. This dude is absolutely unfair. Now, of course you can beat him if you grind levels and if you really learn his moveset, but going in and fight him for the first few times, man, it feels hopeless. Like, he has these thresholds. You hit him so much, he goes into these thresholds and he does these other moves, and every move is all basically an instant kill. This is a very threatening Dracula, and I actually dig it. You kind of want your final bosses to be stupid hard, and what's really good about this is that you fight Dracula like normally, and then Dracula's like, you know what? Meet me over here, and I'm going to, transform and then kill you, right? And so you get this kind of break in between the two phases, and that's absolutely necessary. So I run back and I save, and then I can go and fight him again, and oh man, yeah, if they didn't give me that break in between the phases to where I can go directly to the second phase, I'd have dropped this game right then and there. But yeah, the Dracula fight in here just feels absolutely hopeless, like something that you really want in your final boss. He is manageable, but really you have to fight him several times before you figure it out. But even then, you can trivialize his fight based off of RNG. Like, there are so many cards that you can find that'll basically make this fight absolutely trivial. Like, you can summon this Thunderbird, which hits him no matter where he is on the screen and stuff like that. You can literally make yourself invincible so a stupid charge move doesn't kill you automatically. You can really make this fight incredibly stupid easy, but it's all based on a couple of things. One, again, RNG, these enemies they got to drop stuff, and two, you have to find the enemies that drop specific cards. And that's kind of an obnoxious thing in this game too, is if I want a specific card, I have to know where that enemy is, and then I gotta backtrack to that enemy, which again, backtracking is awful in this game because the waypoint system is very, very lean, so to speak. But yeah, you gotta know that enemy's there, you gotta kill it, 733,000 times before it drops a stupid card, and then you got to figure out the combinations in these cards and then figure out how to activate things sometimes. There's just so much unexplained randomness in this game, and it gets kooky, man. All right, final thoughts for Castlevania Circle of the Moon. Like, I don't really know the term, but this is like a trauma bonding game. This game gives you Stockholm Syndrome. When I first played it, I hated it so much. But the more I think about the game, the more I love it. And that's where the Stockholm Syndrome comes in. It's definitely a game that's more rewarding if you've already played it and know about all of its bullcrap, where certain cards drop and the game's OP card combinations. Then there's also the DSS glitch that really makes subsequent playthroughs that much better. You know, if you don't mind cheating, which I obviously don't. I mean, I like to beat my games normally first, but then any other time, yeah, I'll cheat. I don't care. But yeah, just I don't know what it is about Circle of the Moon. Like, I absolutely did not like this game when I first played it, but the more I play it and the more I think about it, the more I actually love this game. And with all that being said, where do you think it should go on this tier list? Man, I'm thinking... I'm gonna put it above Gato Roboto. Yeah, I still think it's kind of mid-tier, especially because it's so rough to play it because the controls are so stiff, and then the backtracking really isn't fun. And a lot of the exploration, though it is fun to run around in this game and explore stuff and find stuff, a lot of the stuff you find really isn't all that great. Unless it's the enemy drops, and a lot of the enemy drops are really cool things. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, man. This is just kind of a mid game to me. I don't know, we'll see. Maybe I'll think about it. Maybe I'll play it some more and realize that I'm still in love with the game because, just like I said, I got Stockholm Syndrome. This game, I don't know. It feels abusive, but I kind of like it. I'm not going to bury the lead here. I love Momodora Reverie Under the Moonlight. It's one of those really short and sweet Metroidvanias that just also has this kind of like bitterness to it. And when I say bitterness, I think I'm really just referring to like its difficulty. And its difficulty can come from a couple of areas, and we'll talk about that as we move through this talk through. But yeah, I really like Momodora. I'm just going to call it Momodora. So let's get into the pros here. First one I have here is Kaho. Kaho is the main character. I just think she looks really, really cool. She's kind of got that white mage from Final Fantasy thing going on, and she just looked really adorable, and like her weapon being the maple leaf or whatever, that's just really unique and awesome. The next pro I have here is probably its biggest one, and that's its presentation. Momodora looks absolutely fantastic. The sprite work, the animation, all of it just looks really, really great. It's hard to really look at this game and be like, oh yeah, that doesn't look good. Like, no, that looks really good. And then I guess from presentation, it's a pretty natural segue to talk about the atmosphere. Momodora's atmosphere is really fantastic, and it works in a couple of ways. The first way is that they just did a really good job at creating this kind of like really Bloodborne-esque feeling. You know, you're going into like a decayed city with all these cursed monsters, and you got that blood red moon up top. Its inspiration for its atmosphere isn't very difficult to see. But yeah, they do this kind of Bloodborne-esque atmospheric kind of thing, and I think they do it really well. The music, the enemies, just the backgrounds, it all just kind of melds together to make this kind of like decrepit cityscape. Another reason I really like its atmosphere, and I think it works really well, is just this kind of juxtaposition between its cutesy, cartoony aesthetic mixing with this Bloodborne vibe. And when I say cutesy, I'm talking about, you know, a lot of the enemy design in this game, they are almost kind of chibi, not really, but sorta. And its pixel art and animation really kind of adds to that kind of cuteness. Put all that up against this Bloodborne crap, and it makes a pretty interesting backdrop. So I talked about Bloodborne a lot already, so as you can imagine, not only is this game influenced atmospherically by Bloodborne, but also in the combat. Now, I think it's kind of a stretch to say this game plays like Bloodborne. So what I mean by that is that its combat fundamentals are very close to what From Software usually does in a Souls-like. And so believe it or not, this game, Momodora, is actually a Souls-like or a Soulsvania. Although I don't think it's the best example of what a Soulsvania is, it technically is one. And so focusing on the combat, yeah, it feels very Souls-like. And really what I mean by that is like it's kind of methodical as well as punishing, meaning the combat itself is kind of slow, and then if you do happen to have a misstep and get hit, man, these enemies, they hit hard. Now, compared to other Souls-like games, of course, Momodora is very much more forgiving. In fact, it has these arrows that are pretty quick, as well as you can just kind of dodge out of any attack that you're doing, so it is forgiving in that sense. Another thing that makes Momodora's combat a lot more forgiving than your typical Souls-like is basically when you hit enemies, they get stunned. And I actually like this aspect of the game. It makes the combat, pretty quick, pretty easy. But yeah, there's no like poise or anything. It's just as soon as you hit them with your leaf, they just get absolutely stunned and you can just wail on them. This isn't just regular enemies. It actually happens to bosses too. Bosses, they have less opportunities to hit them and stun them. Like if you're fighting a boss, you can hit them and they will get stunned and you can get a couple of hits after that. But then after you get those attacks in, it takes a little bit before they're able to get stunned again. And another thing that makes this game's combat a little easier as well is you have unlimited ammos, which I absolutely love. I love Kaho's arrows, and I love that you can charge them and move and do other things. Like I can charge an arrow and attack you with my maple leaf and then just unload on you once my charge is complete. It really makes combat fun. I touched on the bosses and how you can like stun them, but the bosses in this game can be kind of tough, at least at first. I actually replayed Momodora before doing this update, and I was actually able to beat the game in like 2.5 hours. And I wasn't even speed running, I was just playing it. But because I was familiar with the game already and already knew most of the boss's attacks, it made getting through this game a breeze. But anyways, back to the bosses. Yeah, you can stun them, they can be a little difficult, they all hit like a freaking truck, but they're all absolutely manageable and telegraph everything they do really, really well. So I think Momodora did a really good job with its bosses. One of the cool things about the bosses, which I've never actually done because I fight way too aggressively, is that you're able to defeat them without taking damage. And if you do, you get a special item. Like I said, I've never actually gotten any of these special items, but I hear they're pretty good. Maybe one day I'll try that, but I really don't care. I mean, what's the point in getting all these special items when I can already just blow through the game without them? But I know there's a lot of people out there that are OCD and want to get everything, so have at it. My next pro I forgot to mention during the atmosphere is that there's a bunch of NPCs in this game, and they really make this game feel alive. They're not exceptional by any means, but it's nice to, come across them here and there. I don't think any have any quest lines or anything like that, and that they might just seriously be there just for flavoring. But yeah, I really appreciate them, and I think they helped a lot. My next pro is the cat. You can turn into a cat in this game, and it's awesome, and I love it. I have some cons with the cat, but overall, the cat looks adorable, and it's cute. And it's an interesting take on the morph ball. Another thing I liked about this game was the ivory bugs. I like it when Metroidvanias have other things to find that you can then return to an NPC to get like rewards. And that's what the ivory bugs do in this game. I thought the rewards that you got for finding them were really, really great. And so obviously exploration was really, really fun to do. And I guess that brings us to the next pro is that this game is very open. Matter of fact, it's so open, it's really hard to justify this game as actually being a Metroidvania. Now, it is a Metroidvania, there is some ability gating, but it's very, very few and far between. The only actually ability gating I think you need in this game, off the top of my head, is you need the cat to be able to go into this one area to get one of the 4 crests you need. If you do not have that cat ability, you can't get there, and so that's technically ability gating. But unless memory serves incorrectly, that is the only ability gating in this game. You actually get this air dash in the game that you do not need. I mean, that's kind of a lie. You do need it, especially when you get to Karst Castle. You have to use the air dash to get across these big gaps. But other than the 2 or 3 gaps you absolutely need it for in Karst Castle, you don't use the air dash in any of the biomes prior to it. I just thought that was interesting. But yeah, this game is incredibly open. The objective is that you have to find 4 crests in order to take down this fog wall, I suppose, that lets you into this area that ultimately leads to the game's final biome. So as you can imagine, 4 crests, 4 biomes you gotta visit. And save the biome where you actually need the cat ability to get into it. All the other biomes you can visit at your leisure. It's actually done really well. In fact, in my latest playthrough, I actually didn't fight that Dark Knight thing that you need to defeat in order for this block to rise. I actually went completely around him and was like on top of the area where you need that block. And I dropped down into the area to fight him. That's how non-linear this game starts out, and it's just super funny. At least I thought it was funny. And my last pro is something that I actually didn't know until my latest playthrough. But you get consumable items in this game, and they reload or recharge at every save point. I don't know, for some reason when I play video games, I don't like to use items. I don't know, it's because I grew up on JRPGs and like I never wanted to use my elixirs or mega elixirs because there could be an emergency later on or something. And that kind of carried over into my Metroidvania-ness and my Dark Souls-like games-ish stuff. And so I don't like to use items, I just don't. Unless they're the healing items, of course, the ones that are like Estus flasks that do recharge every time you hit your bonfire or the bell in this game. But I didn't know all the other items also recharged when you went to the save point. So I thought that was interesting, and it made playing through this game a lot more fun, in my opinion. I was like, oh, I have all these cool items I can use now. That's sweet. And I can use them without discretion because they're just going to recharge. I don't know, call me stupid, but I thought that was cool. All right, moving into the cons for Momodora. I think I stated this earlier. I said that some enemies hit way too hard, sometimes harder than the actual bosses. I don't know. I think it just could have used a little bit more rebalancing in that aspect. Another con is this is something that's very, I don't know, it's like a staple in Souls-likes for some reason, but there's no pausing while you're looking at the map. I hate that. I don't know why they do that. It's like, just let me look at the freaking map. I don't know, but yeah, you can't do that in this game either, so whatever. This one was obnoxious. Dialogue can't be skipped. There were some bosses that were absolutely trashing me, and so I would, have to fight them over and over and over again, which meant I had to listen to their stupid dialogue over and over and over again. It was just obnoxious. I guess I could get good, which, whatever, but I mean, gosh, just save me some time, man. Speaking of not saving me some time, man, I get that this is a really short game. I think the first time I ever played the game, it took me 4.5 hours to beat it, and then my fastest time was 2.5 hours. And again, I'm not trying to speed run, it's just, you get familiar, right? But anyway, yeah, this is a short game, but man, does it like to waste your time. Let's just talk about some of these time wasters now. First thing I'll touch on is the elevators. There are elevators in this game, and if you activate them, you are stuck. It's a minor annoyance, but it's still super annoying. Like, I can hit the button and then try to jump out of the elevator real quick, and there's plenty of room, but they put up like an invisible wall, and it just makes you stay in the elevator. I just hate it so much. Next is the fast travel in this game. I'm glad they have it, but I don't think they did a good job with it. Like, you can't just warp to any prayer or bell site. You can only warp to one specific bell site per biome. And some of the bells that it lets you warp to are, pretty far away from where you actually want to be. So I thought that was kind of, a missed opportunity too, to just, why not just let me teleport between any of the bells? I don't know, just thought it was weird. But I think the biggest waste of time is just how the game doesn't have any sort of checkpoint system. And listen, I'm not one for corpse running. I don't like corpse running that much. Like, most of the Metroidvanias that I love that have corpse running, I like despite it having corpse running. It's definitely not a feature I'm looking for in a game. But corpse running has its advantages, one of which being that it autosaves right when you die. This is super helpful because if I was exploring and I found, 3 items or something like that and I unlocked 2 shortcuts, the game will remember that stuff. Not in Momodora. You die in Momodora, you gotta reload. Then you got to get all that stuff again, do all the shortcuts again. It's a pain in the butt. And the fact that they have these like instant death spikes all over the place really just hammers home how much I'd rather them have like this kind of like corpse running system, or at least some sort of autosave system when I die. But yeah, that's the most you'll ever hear from me when it comes to, praising corpse running. I like the autosave. That's it. And I wish Momodora would do that. Hopefully they do that in the upcoming sequel. All right, I got a couple other niggles that I had with the game. One was that enemies respawn when re-entering a room. I find that to be a little weird in a game that's kind of like a Souls-like, because typically enemies will respawn at like a bonfire when you save, right? Well, in Momodora, you just leave a room, come back in, and boom, there's more enemies. Normally, this wouldn't be that bad, but I don't know, man. It was just kind of obnoxious. Add on the fact that there's no real reason to fight in this game because there's no leveling up system. You kill an enemy, you collect like money, M-U-N-N-Y, money. Take the money and you go to shops and you buy some things. It's fine and it works, but there's a certain point where you're just like, I don't want to fight anymore. And that's how it was. I sat down to play this game, and like I said, I beat it in 2.5 hours, and probably the last hour of the game, I was just done fighting. And so I was just like dodging through and jumping and avoiding all the enemies. So as much as I like the combat in this game, I don't know, it's just not as rewarding as I want it to be. And that's okay. It's perfectly viable to play the game a pacifist way. In fact, I think there's like an achievement if you don't kill any actual enemies, only bosses. So if you want to play that way, you're more than welcome to. And then my last con before I get into spoiler territory is that I don't like the naked little imp girls. I don't know, I just didn't like that at all. Thought it was weird, and I just did, I could have went my entire life without naked little imp girls on my screen. That's all I really want to say about that. Okay, moving on to spoilers. I guess the first thing here is when you become the cat, I don't understand why I become the cat in the game. Like, you defeat the witch lady, and then you do this kind of fake out death, and then you wake up as the cat in a cage. You go through this kind of mini dungeon as the cat. You get to the exit and you receive the cat sphere, I think is what it's called. And once you have the cat sphere, you can revert back to being a human and you can become the cat, whenever you want. But I just thought it was weird. It's like, why am I the cat in the first place? And why is this cat sphere just like chilling out here in this garden? It makes, not a whole lot of sense. Anyway, that's just a little nitpick. The next thing I have here is the true ending. And I thought the true ending was kind of odd. Like, the actual ending itself was really cool. And it was set up, it was foreshadowed. So absolutely great follow through on that. And I liked it. But it was weird. It's like the journey to getting there is this, you have to find this spell, that wind spell that's just at the top of this one place, just chilling, and you just kind of grab it. And then you use this wind spell to turn a windmill thing that then opens up a gate that you turn into the cat, go down there, and you can dip your your leaf into this tea. And now your leaf is green and it is stronger, I guess, but like not really, because it really like takes the same amount of hits to kill things. At least that's what I noticed. I don't know. There was just like no build up to it, and it just seems all kind of like silly and random. And so anyway, you get your stronger tea leaf, right? Or your stronger leaf or whatever. And then you go to the final boss and you get a secret final phase. And this didn't really make a whole lot of sense either. Like if you go in without the leaf, you fight the boss's first 2 phases. After that, you know, you get the game over, or you get the first bad ending or whatever. But when you have the leaf, somehow it gives you a 3rd phase. It's fine, but I just wish it, you know, kind of made a little bit more sense. Like, why would this leaf automatically make this 3rd phase appear or something? I don't know, just some sort of explanation or some sort of how getting this green leaf correlates with a brand new fight. I don't know. It just didn't make a whole lot of sense. It was fun. I'll give it that. It's fun to figure this stuff out and then to, you know, play the extra fight. But it's just, you know, it's a little nicer when things kind of like make like narrative sense. All right, my final thoughts on Momodora Reverie Under the Moonlight. As much as I actually like this game, it feels like the beginnings of a much grander game. Again, that's not to say it's a bad game. I absolutely love this game and can't wait for its sequel. I think its brevity mixed with how competently they incorporated Souls-like mechanics within such a short experience is part of its charm and is the reason people like this game so much. I mean, I think that's why I like this game so much, so I'd imagine other people would share that sentiment. And with that being said, where would I put Momodora Reverie Under the Moonlight on the tier list? I think it's a B, no doubt. Yeah, I think it's above average. And I'd probably put it above the Shantae games. It might seem silly to put it over so many other games, but it really is a very fun, condensed experience. And I think it's more to do not just with its brevity and how it incorporated Souls-like mechanics, but just the absolute openness of the game. And then there's the insane mode if you want to play the game in a harder setting. And then you can, you know, defeat the bosses without taking damage to get special items. There's a lot of replayability here, and it's just fun, and it looks absolutely amazing. So yeah, I'm really, really feeling comfortable putting Momodora about mid B. I think it's really good. And there you go. That wraps up episode 6 of the ongoing definitive Metroidvania tier list. Added 3 more games, got ourselves a B and a couple of C's, I think. Just going to leave a shot here so you all can take a look at what this tier list looks like at this point. But I think it's, looking pretty nice. As always, let me know what you think in the comments below. Also, in the description, I'll leave a link to the list of games I have on the Metroidvania picker that I use, the picker that randomly picks the games that I'm going to talk about. I'll leave that link down in the description, and if you want, feel free to click the link and see what games I have on the picker currently. And if you see any games that I don't have on there, let me know in the comments and I'll make sure to add them. But anyway, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you look forward to episode 7. I do these every month at the last Wednesday of the month. So until then, have a good one.